Hey everyone, and welcome back or welcome to my channel. Today's topic will be another why I'm worried about, with Lightsum being the next group in mind. I had planned to talk about Weekly, Everglow, and Lightsum just because they were all put on a long hiatus, which is obviously not a great move considering how strong the competition within girl groups was getting. However, they all announced comebacks around the same time, so I decided to wait. A few months have passed since their releases, and only Lightsum seem both hopeful but also kinda worrisome. They've all been able to maintain relatively similar levels of fame, and there hasn't been any significant drops, which is technically good. However, since Lightsum has been on a downwards trend, this could mean they're either on the road to recovery or even plateauing. A lot can be kind of inferred from how they did with their recent comeback, and so the plan is to discuss the different factors that kind of led them to where they are. But yeah, before I start, I'd appreciate it if you can like and subscribe to my channel. Without further ado, let's start off with the first factor. Lightsum's debut was plagued with a lot of minor issues that allowed the era to introduce the group into the K-pop scene, however, not in the most impactful way. Starting off, the announcement of Lightsum's debut was in the midst of CLC in slight turmoil, with Aoki requesting termination of her contract, which was accepted with little fight. There would also be an announcement of Yujin's participation in Girls Planet, and then both (G)I-DLE's unofficial, but also Soojin's official hiatus, due to the bullying accusations made against Soojin. The mishandling of both CLC and the bullying accusations didn't leave a good impression for Cube to introduce Lightsum as new rookies. It also felt as though Cube was covering up the oldness of CLC and hoping to find a replacement of (G)I-DLE in case the bullying scandal turned for the worse. If we look into the frequency of girl group debuts within Cube, the first group of 4 Minute got 6 years out of the standard 7 years before CLC would debut. CLC would then get 3 years before (G)I-DLE would debut, then this would then be followed by another 3 years before Lightsum would debut. Although the last few groups indicate a 3-year pattern, to me it feels as though 4 Minute's success led them to not needing another girl group under Cube until the contract renewal discussions happened. As for (G)I-DLE, I feel like they were going to have that 6 years too, but then they had to rush Lightsum's debut once the public turned against Soojin and then (G)I-DLE by proxy. Also, if we were to actually follow the 3-year rule assumed, technically a new girl group should be debuting this year. However, Cube is currently trying to debut a boy group, so from hindsight perspective, Lightsum's debut felt rushed with slight to minimal intention. As for the debut rollout, we would get a lot of content to introduce the members, which was a great way to get more attention on the individual members. However, this was backed up with a single album with only one song being their title track of Vanilla. This was a pretty risky move considering Vanilla became the only representative to Lightsum. Considering the range of music available, combined with the fickleness of listeners, it was crucial for the song to appeal on first listen or lose the hype and interest of being a new group. As for the song and its reception, it had a very generic bubblegum pop type of sound, which could have been general public friendly, but it failed to capture the prolonged excitement for the group. With songs like aespa's Next Level, which came out a month before Vanilla, to prominent groups like BTS with Butter and Twice with Alcohol Free, all releasing a few weeks between Lightsum's debut, the competition was rough. All of this culminated in a pretty decent debut in terms of album sales. However, the impacts of these different issues would start to leak on through to their following releases. Lightsum's concept is a minor problem that doesn't get talked about too much. Throughout their releases, there is definitely a brighter sound that has been accompanied with a brighter concept, which perfectly aligns with their name, Lightsum. The issue, however, for me, comes through understanding the lineup of Lightsum, in which there is a clear, distinct contrast in which concepts certain members fit. This has been well defined through their subunit releases in the most recent comeback, in which Nayeon, Yujong, and Hina fit the current Lightsum concept of bright and teen crush, whereas Chowon, Sangha, and Joohyun exude a more girl crush and mature concept. This doesn't mean that the latter 3 can't fit into the current Lightsum concept. However, I feel like being in your element would make you stand out way more, which is where the conflict is coming from. Most of the prominent members that get attention for their stage presence tend to be the members that suit the girl crush mature type of concept. And so it creates this weird dichotomy of having members who could bring the group even more attention, but aren't in their complete best concept to do that. And so it isn't that effective as it could be. I'm not even sure whether changing concepts could be even considered, as the group's name does include the word light in it. And so the expectations versus reality would be confusing and potentially alienating to their original fan base. Despite this challenge, Lightsum has still been able to diversify their concept while still retaining the light theming, which has been perfectly illustrated in their recent release. Honey or Spice incorporates both the bright sound to their music while showing an elevated concept that is not just high teen. This approach showcases each member's unique qualities without completely being restricted within the group's overarching concept, and thus shows the possibilities of Lightsum. Of all factors, I think promoting and marketing Lightsum has been a noticeable issue. Visibility after Vanilla era has been relatively non-existent besides some weekly idol appearances and having Sangha appear on Queendom Puzzle. The group's limited exposure has thus hindered their ability to showcase the personalities of individual members effectively. Considering the evolution of what an idol has become and the necessary attributes to even become a successful idol, marketing and promoting is a key factor that will remain necessary to provide more success to them. This lack of promoting the members creates an obstacle in setting themselves apart from just being another idol in the already competitive field of K-pop. There has been basically no push to display the uniqueness of each members. Most of this has been displayed through their YouTube channel, which can attract attention if impactful. However, it is usually just a space for the fans to continue supporting the group instead. I mean, examples of things that can be done are OSTs for Choeon and Nayeon, potential Japanese promotions considering they have Hina, which serves as an initial foundation to research into whether they would even be successful overseas, and something dance related for Joohyun, considering the success of Street Women Fighters. I mean, there's just so much that can be done to further showcase the members beyond niche places that only a few would be exposed to. All this has resulted in the reduced interest retained with each comeback highlighted in their album sales. The recent comeback has seen a slight revival in better promotions as their visibility has increased more in comparison to Alive era. This seems to be a potential start in building on the momentum generated, which should be the goal. However, the incompetence in Cube's approach to knowing how to market Lightsum has seen some interesting choices, and so the final factor will focus on the other responsibilities they have acted upon and led Lightsum to where they are. And finally, we obviously can't do this video without discussing the most confusing entertainment company of Cube. With a long roster of groups that Cube has mismanaged and mishandled, there is definitely a lot of projecting that can be done. However, looking into Lightsum's case, one clear misstep from Cube was in 2022 when they announced the departure of Jian and Hyun, citing reorganizing Lightsum as a 6-member group. The statement provided no justifiable reason for fans to understand the reason for them leaving the group. Like many of the other groups I've done videos on, the general belief regarding changing up the lineup is that it could imply a level of uncertainty towards the group's future, and thus fans could become more apprehensive about their support. The general assumption made by fans for the departure of the 2 members, which was due to their young age, in which it was assumed that Q was rebranding Lightsum towards a more mature concept, which question I have for you guys. Was Honey or Spice something that Jian and Hyun couldn't do? Regardless of the reason though, what didn't help Cube was the fact that the announcement would then be followed by a 1-year hiatus. Considering this decision is not something that's just a quick action, a plan should have been implemented to restore the faith of listeners and fans, and then prove the necessity for this reorganization. However, they instead left them on a hiatus for 1.5 years from their last comeback, which left fans marinating in their anger for Cube. Another thing that can be debatable about Cube is that despite being mid-sized, their groups don't show a clear track record of instant success or prolonged success. This can kind of explain why initially Lightsum might not do as well. However, doing things like debuting them with a single song and then providing minimal promotions are things that don't help too. So that's where that 50-50 blame could go towards. In that, yeah, they're still relatively new, but then there has been questionable or even a lack of actioning from Cube's end. Final thoughts. Lightsum seem to have finally gotten a rhythm through their recent release, and so hopefully they can continue this momentum and build upon it, as opposed to being forgotten. As of recent, we have seen the departure of all the B2B members. CLC activities with Cube have officially ended. Pentagon is still technically active, but 6 members have left Cube Entertainment, and thus this leaves (G)I-DLE and Lightsum as the only proper active groups. This kind of puts Lightsum in a relatively decent position to avoid long hiatuses and more promotions to potentially build upon their success. However, the only thing that could derail their momentum would be the new upcoming Cube boy group, which would require a decent amount of attention from Cube initially. This could then potentially stretch its resources, and there may be even more priority taken away from Lightsum, depending on how well the new group's debut does too. But yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and let me know your thoughts on Lightsum, their recent comeback of Honey or Spice, and maybe how hopeful you think their new direction as 6 looks like. Their music has been pretty alright to me, but Alive Era plus the B-side of I just made me look a bit more carefully at them. Honey or Spice has been pretty alright so far for me, but it would be interesting to hopefully see more and what other concepts they might try out while sticking to their brighter sound. As for my next video, I do have some ideas, but nothing solidified just quite yet as of recording this. But if you're keen to see what I'll be discussing next, then please like and subscribe to keep up to date, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!